Hello everyone. So welcome to the 16th session in our Indian Modern History course, and today we'll talk about the economic policies of the Britishers. Now in the last turn we have talked about the first section of the economic policies, that is the land revenue policies. There where we have discussed about the three land revenue system. So I'll keep some slides for the revision. So before that, let's do some questions. We have a lot of previous year questions today. I think 11, 12 previous year questions today we'll discuss. So starting with the first one, which among the following was the first European to initiate the policy of taking parts in the quarrels of Indian princes with the view of acquiring the territories? So you have to pause the video and try the answers, especially in the ones where I say so, because already those questions we have discussed. So who was the first European who had this plan in his mind? He was a Frenchman, that is, his name was Dupleix, right? So Dupleix was the first person who had this idea of taking quarrels with the Indian princes with the view of acquiring the territories. And he has done so with the Carnatic Wars. We have seen that. And after that, he was recalled. Chalo. Then it's an easy question. Consider the following statement. Robert Clive was the first Governor General of the Bengal. William Bentinck was the first Governor General of India. Again, a very easy question. You can pause the video and try the answer. Now we know Robert Clive was the governor of the Bengal, right? The first Governor General of Bengal that came after the Regulating Act. First Governor General of Bengal became after the Regulating Act, and he was the Warren Hastings. So Regulating Act has changes the designation of the governor from governor to Governor General of the Bengalia, Governor General of the Fort Williams, right? So he was Warren Hastings, and the first Governor General of India was William Bentinck, and that happened with the Charter Act of 1833. Chalo, easy thing because we already discussed it. Then again, next question, 1995 question. Which of the following pair is correct? Battle of Buxar, Mir Jafar versus Clive. Battle of Wandibosh, French versus East India Company. Battle of Chilinvilla, Dalhousie versus the Marathas, and Battle of Kharda, Nizam versus the East India Company. Which is the following is correctly matched? Now, for example, let us see these four battles are given. Obviously, one answer will be correct. But it is our duty as an aspirant that what we have to keep in mind, because these battles have already been asked in UPSC. So we need to know about all the battles. In fact, I have discussed you with all the battles. Fourth battle in a very briefly I have discussed, but I have discussed that this happened during the times of the John Shore, if you recall, the fourth battle. Battle of Chilinvilla, that happened during the Second Anglo-Sikh War. Battle of Wandibosh, we know, French versus East India Company, and that is the right answer. That is the second option. First option we know it was not between Mir Jafar versus the Clive, it was versus the Mir Qasim, Shujaud-Dawla, and Shah Alam II versus the East India Company. So second statement is right, but we should know about the other two battles as well. For example, first discuss about Battle of Kharda. Now, Battle of Kharda happened. Kharda is a place in Maharashtra. It is a battle between Nizam versus the East India Company, or Nizam versus the Maratha specifically. It was not Maratha versus East India Company. It was Nizam versus the Maratha. Now, Maratha have won this battle, and Nizam asked for help from the Britishers, but Britishers did not help him. Okay? It was one of the last battles where all the Maratha chiefs under the leadership of, don't have to remember the name, they fought, consist of cavalry including gunmen, bowmen, and all these things, but they won, and the Nizam lost. Nizam wanted some protection from the Britishers from Mr. John Shore, but John Shore was 1795. So Mr. John Shore has adopted the policy of non-intervention, and that is why the British prestige has gone low. That is where we will enter into the scene, that is Lord Wellesley. So that is Battle of Kharda. Next is Battle of Chilinvilla. That is a place in the modern day Pakistan. Now this battle was fought in the Second Anglo-Sikh War, and it was in fact a very bloody battle, one of the bloodiest battle which was being fought. And we have seen that a lot of battles go on draw. This was the same battle. In fact, because of the draw, it was a blow to the British prestige. But overall, war was won by the British. Second Anglo-Sikh War. Chalo. Next question, very easy question again. 1999 question. You have given a list of the year, and secondly you are given the list of the wars. So Anglo-Burma War, Anglo-Afghan, Anglo-Maratha, Anglo-Mysore. So first Anglo-Burma War, when it happened? First Anglo-Burma War in 1824 to 1826 under the Lord Amherst. Next Anglo-Afghan War, first Anglo-Afghan War, when it happened? First Anglo-Afghan War. I hope you are able to recall, right? First Anglo-Afghan War happened during the times of the Lord Hardinge. Lord Hardinge won in 1845. 1838 to 1842. Lord it was not Hardinge won, it was in the times of the Lord Auckland, who followed an forward policy. Then you have the second then you have the first Anglo-Maratha War that happened in 1780, and second that happened in the times of the Warren Hastings, and second Anglo-Mysore War also happened in the times of the Warren Hastings in the 1775. So what will be the answer? Very easy question. So first Anglo-Burmese War is 1824, third ka A. So you eliminate this, you eliminate this, you are left with this. Fourth ka B. So second Anglo-Afghan War, then one ka D or C. So 1775 first Anglo-Maratha War or first Anglo-Mysore War. So it's very easy answer, that is first the Anglo-Maratha War started in 1775. And just 1780 to 1784 happened your second Anglo-Mysore War, ended with the Treaty of Mangalore. Okay, so this is where your second Anglo-Mysore War happened. So थोड़ा dates का ध्यान रखना है ना, because there are a lot of dates and we have discussed a lot of dates, and you have to remember these dates parallelly. You can make a simple timeline also for yourself. I can do it for you as well, but if you can do it for yourself, making a small timeline of all the battles which are being fought, एक छोटा सा timeline if you can make, that would give me a very good perspective, a very good snapshot of the all the battles of the Britishers, especially with the different Indian states. Okay, chalo. Let us discuss this question. Interesting question. With reference to Rayatwari settlement, consider the following statement. Rent was paid directly by the peasants to the government. The government gave patta to the riots. The land was surveyed and assessed before being taxed. Now, if you apply a bit of common sense, first statement is right. We have discussed that the Rayatwari mein kya tha? It was directly paid by the peasant to the governor. Yes, it was correct statement. So first statement is right. That means third statement is wrong. Now you have the option 2 and option 3. Both of them you need to know. If you read the third statement, that is land was surveyed and assessed before being taxed. Now you remember in the context in which Rayatwari settlement is coming. Rayatwari settlement is coming in the context of the failures that have come in the permanent settlement. So permanent settlements of the failure have been seen, where the Britishers have not properly taken into account the kind of lands, because of which lot of famines, high-handedness by the zamindars, lack of revenue estimation, these things are being done. So obviously when the Thomas Munro will recommend that we should go for the Rayatwari, obviously he must have assessed and surveyed the land. So if you apply a bit of common sense, that goes to show the third statement should be right. For example, if the statement comes that Rayatwari settlement, a sort of relief was given to the farmer, a provision of the relief was given for the farmers in the times of the famine. Now this statement de facto is wrong because it was nothing being done. We have discussed that, but it was there, it was being done, and hence we need to remember like that. Okay, so इस चीज का ध्यान इस तरीके से रखना है. We need to focus on that. चलो, so answer will be 1, 2 and 3. Next question is 2000 question. Match list 1 with the select correct answer using the code given below the list. So land allocated to the big feudal landlords, land allocated to the revenue farmers or the rent collectors, land allocated to each peasants with the right to sublet, mortgage, transfer, gift or sell, revenue settlement made at a village level. Now for which you are sure, let's say you are sure with the village level, that is nothing but Mahalwari. So fourth ka C. Fourth C, only this option is there. So your answer is there. Then obviously third B, that is Rayotwari system. That is rent collector, that is your Zamindari system. And the first one is that is your Jagirdari system. So it's a very easy answer, very easy question to handle. Now UPSC is not asking such questions. Such questions are not being asked. Such questions means these type of options, because these questions become easy to answer. Now they ask the one only, two only, like this. So these questions, if you find the test series also, we don't find those in the test series also now. But such questions are still being asked in the exams such as CDS and the other examinations. But anyway, we have to prepare for the future, and the future may essay questions won't come, because these are very easy questions to crack, even if you have very little knowledge with respect to the subject matter. Now, let us start our session. So now we have discussed previously that how Indian economy was transformed from the pre-colonial economy to a economy which has a lot of surplus labor, which has a very low productivity, very poor growth, and very poor equity. And what, just because of the poor policies of the Britishers, the things they have done. One policy is, we have read about the land revenue system, right? Okay. Now today we have to discuss about this industrial wala thing. Before that, let us very quickly recall what we have done. So we have discussed about these three land revenue system, that is permanent settlement, Mahalwari, and Rayatwari system. These systems we have read, and we have seen that how the exploitation was done. Means were different, but the aim was the same. I have given you one question with respect to that as well, that all the land revenue system had the different means can be different, but the aim was same. Firstly, the maximum revenue maximization for the Britishers, and little care about the farmers, and the consequences was also the same. Okay. Then we have discussed about what are the consequences. So land system, land became a property which was not there. Then panchayat lost its prestige, rural industry got destroyed, that we will discuss in detail today. Then serfdom, that is begari, food insecurity, famines, cash economy, and farmers became very indirect to the money lenders. And that gave rise to the very subleasing, subinfeudation, and all these problems. Begari as well. And there was no focus, or very little focus, on the infrastructure creation. Even if that infrastructure creation was done, it was with respect to, it came up with that high taxes. So the regular feature was the recurrent famine which was happening. There was impoverishment and the poverty, which led to food insecurity and the famine situation. And by 1850 to 1900, around 2.8 million people, 2.8 crore people, 28 million people have died because of these famines and the atrocities. Chalo. Now we discuss about the Indian manufacturing, or overall India before the colonial times. Now India was a self-sufficient Indian economy. Industry was developed, as we have discussed. It was developed with respect to the times of that time. For example, handicrafts were done, trade was being done. And obviously, as if we would have followed that path, obviously we have also taken the infusion of the technology, and we would have also improved upon it. But that did not happen because of the intervention of the Britishers. We prepared almost everything: wood, silk, furniture, and it was supplied by the Indian traders. Everything: wools, silk, furniture, and everything. Now, then English mercantilists and manufacturer will say to the Indian government that if everything is getting exported here, we will see with the diagrams as well, then why, what these manufacturers will do, those manufacturers, those who are sitting in the British. So English government start passing the laws, and they started banning all kinds of clothes, silk, muslin, and calico from India, Persia, and China. Because, for example, you can remember at that time of a protectionism, that they will fine the people who wear the Indian silk, and $20 who sold the Indian silk. These kind of provisions have come so that, because the Indian goods were so cheap to form, because we have the natural resources of raw material, we have the ancient knowledge or the traditional wisdom to produce these things. So our cost of production was low, quality was good, cheap labor was obviously there, and the English manufacturers could not compete with that. So they wanted their government to put a lot of custom duties, so called, or the penalties on the people who use these materials. Okay. Now let us understand with some diagrams. This was the state with the East India Company started in India. The main idea of the East India Company was a trading company, that it will do the trade. So the trade of what? Obviously from India they will buy a lot of Indian goods and they will export these Indian goods in the British market. Obviously the price, if it is there, obviously they'll sell it for this price, right? And in between they will earn the interest. The point is how they will pay to the India. They have no other way to pay but with the gold and the silver, because obviously the Indians will not accept the pound of their currency. The Indians will accept what? Gold and silver with respect to the goods that they have to give. Now EIC, obviously this is not a good thing for EIC, because this gold and silver, giving this gold and silver is not a good option, especially for the mercantilist. They believe that this gold and silver is limited and we need to preserve as much as possible. Now, this is the idea with which the EIC went ahead, and they thought that from where we need to pay this. We need to pay for these Indian goods and how we should pay for it. So they decided, or we have seen that how they got the Diwani rights post Battle of Buxar. Post Battle of Buxar, they got these Diwani rights. Now, with the Diwani rights, the India got all the land revenue that they got from India, okay, from Diwani rights. Now these Diwani rights, the land revenue that they got, they paid the same money with that money. That is the money that they have got from the land revenue system. We have discussed permanent settlement, Rayatwari and Mahalwari. So they started to do that. Now they will procure the goods, they will pay by them, and they will export this. Now slowly and slowly you will see these goods now we will become the raw material rather than the finished goods. These goods have transformed to the raw material, not the uh, finished goods from India to Britain. Now slowly, now in 1813 the British manufacturers have now woken up. Okay, what is happening? They say that East India Company is the sole company which is doing all these things and we are ought to be the part of it. So British manufacturer, inspired by the Adam Smith wealth of nation, laissez-faire, that is the free trade, and they said that this monopoly needs to be broken of the East India Company. And we know that monopoly was broken in the 1830. We have discussed the idea also of utilitarianism, liberalism, है ना, थोड़ा relate करो previously. We have discussed the idea of utilitarianism, liberalism, Adam Smith, evangelism. So the British manufacturers have said, no, 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 you cannot have this monopoly. We will also trade with that. We will also trade with India. And obviously, what has started? The one-way free trade started. That means if India pushed its finished goods to the Britain, they will charge very high custom duties, the Britain people. If they put this raw material, the almost zero custom duties there on the raw material. Whereas when the from the British, the duty-free exports will come, the finished goods, they will get zero custom duty in India. So you can see that from India, raw material is being supplied freely, and from Britain, finished goods are coming almost zero duty-free exports. Duty-free exports. And the EIC's role has been taken out. Now EIC is no more in the picture because now EIC has uski monopoly chali gayi. It now has become a totally administrative body. This is the phase of the company. After that, one more phase was there. We have discussed that of the investment phase that we'll look at the last. कि भाई end में investment phase आया from the Britain to India. Now, what is the consequence of it? The consequence of it that India has become the agrarian appendage of the industrial Britain. So Britain has become industrialized and India will become the agrarian appendage, means it will provide all sort of raw materials for the industrial Britain. Okay, just like the rural areas to the urban areas. So it was such that, so it was a ruralization of India. So India will become more rural, the rural economy will dominate. And within the rural economy, only the agrarian economy. And India has also become the ready market for the absorbing the British manufacturer good. Now imagine they have to improve the British manufacturer demand in India. What they will do? They have to increase this demand in India. So what the options they have? First option is obviously they will destroy the Indian industry. So Indian industry को destroy करो, and that will be known as the process of deindustrialization. But for example, people need some stuff, but if they don't find the stuff by the local manufacturer, obviously they go for the foreign manufacturer. So destroy this Indian industry. Second idea, that how we create the demand, that we improve the taste of the people. We improve the taste of the people with respect to the absorption of the British goods, so that they appreciate and they absorb the British good. They, for example, हम क्यों पहनते हैं, let's say branded clothes, because we get a taste of it. For example, Ellen Soli, for example, Nike, for example, Reebok, because we got a taste of it. So get these Indian taste of the British good, change their mindset, kind of a thing. For example, now our mindset is being changed with respect to the ads. Similarly, British changed the mindset with respect to the education. Okay? That we'll read in the next turn. That how the socio-cultural policies have been instrumental in the economic transformation of the British economy. Okay? Chalo. Post 1857 phase, we have discussed that what have started to come, or you can say before also, in the time of Dalhousie, for example, we have discussed the minimum guarantee system that Dalhousie has said, that you are guaranteed the minimum guarantee on the return on investment. So the investment from the British to India started to come, right? A huge investment. So India has become a play field of the investments. Okay? So this is the post 1857 phase. If you see some of the observations, these observations basically are not important for our exams, but just it helps us to humanize the things, to basically realize the things what we have discussed. For example, there is person H.H. Wilson, co-founder of the James Mill in the History of India, has summarized the injustice of the indiscriminate treatment meted out to the Indian trade by the Imperial British. So what are the injustices being done? He has written that all the mills of, let's say, Palissy and Manchester would have stopped on their onset if, and could scarcely again get instant in motion even by the power of steam. They were created and they flourished because of the sacrifice of the Indian manufacturer. Because the Indian manufacturer have been sacrificed, they have been at the mercy of a stranger, that is the East India Company or the Britishers, and they are the political injustice which is keeping them from being independent. Had they been independent, then obviously this would not have been done. So this was an opinion not of an Indian but of an British. Now let us discuss the idea of deindustrialization. So we have discussed that after 1820, European markets virtually closed to Indian exports. Indian exports were not going there. In India, a railway network has been put in place so as to, obviously we have discussed in the times of the Dalhousie also, for example, raw material from this to this and finished good from this to this. So connecting the hinterland, the remotest part, to find more markets and to extract more raw materials. Then loss of the traditional livelihood, and no industrialization simultaneously happening in India. Traditional livelihood means, for example, handicraft. Obviously, the Indian handicraft cannot compete with the machine products which are coming from Britain. The products which are coming from Britain, for example, they are having, let's say, $2, and Indians are making cost here at $3. So the Indian things are getting costly. So hence, they cannot compete with them. Even in the local market, they cannot compete with them, because the things coming from the Britain, they are having, first of all, raw material very cheap. Secondly, they are having the duty-free exports, then also very cheap. So the Indian artists and the handicrafts felt they did not find the local market. So even if they did not find the local market, sometimes these Nawabs used to patronize them and used to give them money. For example, okay, we will buy your stuff. But now we have seen the princes and the nobility, what was their situation? They are putting under the subsidiary alliance. Their territories are annexed. They are under the British resident is imposed in their territory. So when they don't have the money or neither the interest, what do you mean by the interest? Interest means now the taste of the Britishhood or the taste of the English things are being given to the Nawabs as well. They try this, for example, British thing, British wine, British X, British Y, British Z. So a British taste has been given to the Nawabs as well, so that they can be a potential market. When the Nawabs started to do so, when your role model started to do so, when everyone starts to do so. So that's the case. So this was the context of the deindustrialization. Let us see more. So first, decline of the traditional ruling class. So the traditional ruling class, for example, these Nawabs, these princes, these went not there. For example, let's say within the village, the panchayats also lost their prestige. So those the people in the panchayat, they used to patronize, for example, these artisan, or they sometimes used to help these people, but not no help is there. Next, new middle class fond of the British goods. Now there is a new middle class which is fond of the British good. Now they like the British good. No, British good are so good. We will buy this British good only. So obviously they have reduced the demand of the Indian goods. So demand of the Indian good itself is reduced. Then industrial revolution happening in the Britain and the influx of the machine good. And that is a cheaper machine good. And that is another one important criteria for the deindustrialization. And lastly, second, unilateral free trade. Free trade that is unilateral, that means from India it's not free trade, but from outside it's a free trade. And then obviously there is no parallel development of any machine industry in India. For example, iron and steel, textile, it was developed textile but later on. So India, from being a net exporter, which was a pre-colonial time, India has become a net importer of the things, so which is not done. Now industrialization, the consequence of industrialization, the people lost their work. They are dependent more on the rural areas. Obviously, the consequence of the deindustrialization, a lot of people were employed in these areas. Now they are, for example, they are in the urban areas. Slowly, urban setting is improving because cities are the hub of the growth, hub of growth. So urban settings was improving with industrialization. Now, when the deindustrialization will happen, urban may you will find no work. For example, what happened in the times of the, let's say, lockdown? People are working in the urban area, but they could not find work in the urban area. So they have to come to the rural area. So what has improved what has done the ruralization, or known as the deurbanization. So this was the first impact, that when you lose industry, when you lose this employment to these people, what will happen? These people will return back to their homes in the rural areas, and that will the phenomenon of deurbanization and the ruralization. Now when they'll come back to the rural areas, what will happen? What they will do? Obviously they'll go into the agriculture. They'll become a landless farmer. That thing we have discussed with the permanent settlement as well. Now, for example, earlier these 2 3, let's say, these farmers were there, but now because of the deindustrialization, what is happening? You have added few more farmers in there. Now the bargaining power of the overall farmers has reduced, because obviously the demand of the work has increased and the supply is there limited. That is why you have increase in the number of landless laborers. Landless laborers have increased to a new extent. Traditional art and craftsmanship loss of a lot of culture was also witnessed in the times of the British. Indian culture, Indian traditional culture, because obviously when you have the traditional people doing handicraft, they will do the handicrafts in the local arts. But when the Britishers will come, obviously they are not doing anything. When they don't do anything, how that will be preserved? Obviously they will feel threatened. And that is also known as the peasantization. That means your peasants have increased, landless laborers or the tenant act will have increased. So these are the impacts of the deindustrialization. Now, deindustrialization also, one of the component was there was an Indian weakness as well. There was a problem with the Indian rulers as well. For example, Indian manufacturer failed to find new markets. Unlike the British, we don't have the adventurous traders. For example, The Britishers, if you remember, they were the merchants who have pushed for the Queen to give the charter to come to India. So it is a problem with Indian traders. They were not adventurous enough to explore to the other countries. Yes, there have been cases previously, but not to that extent which was done by the Britishers. And one of the factor behind it that we did not have the powerful navy, for example. And Indian rulers have always ignored this navy, whether it be the Mughals or anyone. Maratha tried to develop the navy, but they did not prioritize it, or they could not finish the task. So they did not prioritize any navy. So Indian ruler failed to make any effort for the trade policy. They keep on focusing on this land revenue income. They did not try to improve the trades on the scientific lines or expanding the markets or reducing the raw material, something like that. Yes, there was something being done. For example, in the medieval history, you must have read about, let's say, Shesha Suri. He has done something about the trade. But ultimately, all these efforts were very ad hoc, very spontaneous, and not a proper trade policies were being made. Then they did not focus on the coastal trade, for example. And when they did not focus on the coastal trade, obviously the others will come and take the advantage of it. For example, we have seen the story of the Portuguese in the very first session, that how the Portuguese come about conquering the places, especially in the western coast of India. Why? Because they have the navy, because they have the they have seen the opportunity, because no ruler was there who is doing the coastal trade properly, or it was not prioritized by the Indian rulers, and they went ahead and take it up. So yes, there were a lot of problems with the Indian weaknesses as well. So this is the idea behind the deindustrialization. Now with the deindustrialization and with the things that we have discussed, this is discussed one important idea, that is drain of wealth. Now the idea of the drain of wealth has been given by Dadabhai Naoroji, okay, in his book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. Now this idea we will discuss again when we'll talk about the rise of the modern nationalism. But the economic drain basically is the part of this economic exploitation done by the Britishers. That is the economic drain. Firstly, what is economic drain? The part of the economic drain very easy to understand. For example, you have the GDP of India. When your GDP of India, this is the GDP of India, let's say this portion of the GDP of India, or 70 to 80% GDP of India is not available for your consumption. For example, you are producing something, goods and service, but those goods and service you are not able to use. That is nothing but drain. Someone else is using. That is drain of your resources. Well, the easiest example, for example, you are earning something and someone is taking this much money out of you. For example, your friend, your relative, or anyone. So that means you are drained. Le liya kisi ne. So economic drain refers to the national product of India, which was not available for the consumption for its people, which was being drained away to Britain for political reasons, and India was not getting the adequate economic or the material returns. For example, even if we have the raw materials, we are supposed to get the proper price for it, but no, we are not getting the proper price for it. On the other hand, our industries were systematically deindustrialized and these things were done. Land revenue, for example, very crude way of extracting the land revenues were there. So these things were not done. Now, drain of wealth, yes, it was first done by the Dadabhai Naoroji, but later on, a lot of more people have also contributed to it. Especially when we'll talk about the moderates. So moderates were a lot of moderates were economic critic. They presented the economic critic of the British, that the British they have exploited India, and a lot of moderates name you can see. For example, Mahadev Govind Ranade, R.C. Dutt, Gopal Krishna Gokhale. So you need to remember a few of these names. Personalities को याद रखना है. So M.G. Ranade, R.C. Dutt, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, G. Subramanyam Iyer, and Prithvi Chandra Ray. R.C. Dutt has also written a book that is the Economic History of India, and he has come up with the similar observations, that observations done by the Dadabhai Naoroji. So essence of the 19th century colonism, they said, lay in the transformation of India into a supplier of foodstuff and the raw material to the metropolis and the market of the metropolitan manufacturer and the field of investment of the British capital. So that's what we have discussed. That means Bharat kya karega? From India will supply the foodstuff and the raw material to the metropolis, means the UK. And the market for the metropolitan manufacturer, that means for the UK manufacturer where the industrial revolution is taking place, we are the market and a field of investment that we have discussed. Chalo. So he has also calculated that how much drain is happening. For example, year by year, you can see from 8 million, 12 million to 32 million pounds in 1905. This was the extent of the drain calculated by the Dadabhai Naoroji in his book. That is why the theory is known as the drain of wealth theory. It has become one of the foundation theories of one of the foundational theories of the economic critic. Or when he'll come up with this work, for example, when he'll show through the Indians that this much drain is happening, that will give rise to the national consciousness. Okay, these are the Britishers, and these are obviously national consciousness is there. Obviously, those things are there because the people can feel it. For example, peasants can feel it in the land revenue system. But now everyone, and it's out in the public, it's in the fact, it's been established. One thing you are feeling it only, now it's being established as a fact because someone has put a lot of research on it. Now you can see at that time trains are there, telegraphs are there, so these ideas are spreading. We'll discuss more. Open libraries used to be there, people used to read the newspaper a lot, right? So then there is a national consciousness will rise. No, we have to stand up and we have to fight these Britishers. Okay, all these ideas we'll take up in detail. Now, drain of wealth has constituents. This was being, so there are a few constituents of the drain of wealth. First, very quantitatively they have put. So very quantitative analysis they have put of the drain of wealth. First, the visible aspect, jo dikh raha hai, what we can see from our eyes, that this is how the drain is being done. So profits are taken, land revenue extraction, plundering, for example, wars in the other countries, paid from the Indian exchequer. From Indian money, they are paying for the war. Corruption, which is clear. So these are the visible aspects. Corruption directly going into the pockets of the British officials, not Indian. So these are the visible aspects. Then there are some invisible aspects. First is the home charges. We'll discuss what is home charges. Interest on the foreign capital investment, foreign banking, insurance, and shipping companies. So these companies are coming, extracting money from India. For example, we have discussed the investments, how the returns will go to these people. Returns will go only and only with the Indian exchequer. So Dalhousie to promise kar diya. Dalhousie has promised that we'll give you 5% minimum guarantee system. But from where that 5% will come? That 5% will come from the Indian money only. So invisible aspect mein home charges, interest on the foreign capital investment, foreign banking, insurance. What are these home charges? Home charges are basically the investments done by the Secretary of State in Britain on behalf of the India. So for example, dividends to the shareholder of EIC, civil and military charges, store purchases. That means, for example, they're maintaining a troop, for example, in British. Then this is also included into the Indian exchequer. Interest on the public debt. For example, they have taken the public debt on behalf of the government of India. So this is also included in the home charges. Whatever they'll purchase, the salary of the Secretary of State, for example, the purchases done by the Secretary of State. For example, he bought a car, let's say. All these things are the home charges. So these are known as the home charges. Okay? So war in the other country becomes a visible aspect. But whatever you are maintaining, civil and military in England, that is a home charge. Okay? Chalo. Now let us see some observation. First observation from Dadabhai Naoroji. What he has said, it is a pitiless operation of economic laws. It is a thoughtless and pitiless action of the British policy. It is a pitiless eating of India's substance in India. Further pitiless drain to the England. In short, the pitiless perversion of the economic laws by the sad bleeding to which India is subjected, and that is destroying India. So very scathing remarks are done by the Dadabhai Naoroji. Pitiless, 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 everything. Then George Suvillian, he was the board of revenue in Madras. He said that it is like an sponge Indian system. So sponge that takes the everything from Ganges. He gives an example of Ganges and themes. He said that good things are taken from Ganges like a sponge and we squeeze them in the themes. So sponge hota hai na, we take the money and we put it somewhere. Similar like that. So we put the from Ganges, we have taken the good things and we're putting it into the themes. So these are the observations of these people. Now, obviously, it has a lot of economic and political impact. if we talk about the economic impact, so it was the real cause of backwardness. This drain was considered as the real cause of backwardness. That's why India is backward, why India is poor, why so many people are dying of the famine. So what is the cause behind it? They can now see one visible enemy, that this is because of this drain. Loss of wealth and loss of capital. Now that capital could be used, that money could have been used for income generation, for example employment, for example improvement in the agriculture, not done. Improvement in the industry, not done. So those money, for example, currently the government takes the tax from us, right? Now that tax is used for roads, employment, MG Narega and all these things. So all these taxes are used for these purposes, you know. Now these things are not done. Obviously there is an opportunity cost. So these are the economic impacts of it. So how slow growth of the modern industry, deindustrialization, and the poor situation of the peasants. The political impact of it, the nationalist leader highlighted this drain. We have discussed that. They highlighted this drain, political conflict. They saw that there is a political conflict, or the idea of the political conflict between the Britain and the India, reflected in the drain of wealth theory. And then there's a political conflict, it requires a political solution. Then they'll come up with different associations. For example, Dadabhai Naroji come up with the East India Association and all these things. They created awareness among the common people. Okay? Chalo. Then one Marxist historian, that is RP Dutt, he has also given the economic colonialism, 3 stages of economic colonialism. Whatever we have discussed, just summarizing those into the different words. He said that the first phase came in the mercantile stage in 1757 to 1813, when the monopoly was broken. Second stage, the industrial phase, and third is the financial phase. Financial phase, that is the phase of the investments. So let's look at it one by one very quickly. Okay? We have understood it. You can write into these categories as well. Before that, you can also add East India Company before getting the Diwani rights, how it was done. Okay? Chalo. But that was not economic colonialism. Understand this. That is why he has not included that into this category. Why? Because in that time they are paying with the bullions, isn't it? For example, as an Indian manufacturer, you are getting all the money for your goods. You are happy with that. So that is not an economic colonialism. It started from 1757 when they started to pay the money out of the Diwani of the land revenue from India, and they used to pay that same money to the Indians. And that is where the economic colonialism has come. So for example, very quickly, first phase, that is mercantile phase. Now, if you recall whatever we have discussed from 1757 to 1813, in which you have seen that British are in the focus of they need to eliminate their rival European partners. You know, Battle of Bedara, Battle of Vandy Wash, Carnatic Wars. So these are they have to eliminate these European powers. They need to eliminate the native rulers who are creating the obstacles. For example, your Bengal Nawab in the Battle of Palasi, they need to eliminate him. They need to strengthen their trade because they are a mercantilist. They need to export a lot. So they want to create this monopoly in trade and secure trade and the commercial interest. So they will create the base for the direct plunder by establishing the political control over the Indian territory. Without establishing any political control over the Indian territory, this is not possible. Okay? Now, in the phase one, there was a large-scale drain of wealth from India, which constituted, let us very quickly, which 2 to 3% of the British national income at that time. It was the wealth that paved the important role for the British Industrial Revolution. So British Industrial Revolution is laid on the foundation of the sacrifices of the Indian manufacturers and the blood of the Indians. This question can come in your world history or a mixture of the modern the world history. So there you have to write about the economic plunder which was done and how this economic plunder is connected to the Industrial Revolution of the Britain as well. In this stage, no large-scale import of the British manufacturer into India, rather than reverse occurred. There was the increased exports of the Indian textile. We have discussed that. So exports of the Indian textiles were there, but they are paid by the other things. Weavers were ruined at this stage by the company's monopoly and exploitation. They were forced to produce for company under the uneconomic compulsion. Now, for example, let's say EIC gets hold over Bengal. Now the weavers and the Bengal EIC will say we will pay you only this much money, because they have to reduce their input cost as well, right, to increase the profits Profit is equal to cost, selling price minus cost price. So they have to decrease their input prices. Obviously, when they decrease their input prices, they will put these weavers under the uneconomic compulsions. Then we have the second phase, that is the industrial phase. Now industrial phase, what is happening in the Britain, that is happening in the industrial revolution. So the need of the market is there. Charter Act monopoly is broken. The steps have been taken to improve the free trade. Now Indian economy is integrated with the global economy. We have discussed with the idea of Dalhousie as well, that he has also taken the steps to integrate Indian economy into the global economy. All import duties in India were either removed or drastically reduced to the nominal rates. Setting up of the new politico-administrative approach, that is, the judicial system and the social political system changed. Need to develop Indian social structure in accordance with the capitalist and the commercial structure, means just that taste wala thing that we have discussed. So everything needs to be done to suit to the capitalist need of the country or the industrial needs of the Britain. For example, education policy, development of the transport and communication, expansion of trade and commerce. These things will be done. For example, we have discussed ease of doing business in the times of the Dalhousie. So all these things are being done so as to make sure that we cater to the British industrial economy. Okay? So all the import duties in India either totally removed or drastically reduced to the nominal rate. That is, whatever goods are coming from outside, zero import duties. Chalo. So taxation on the burden on the peasants rose sharply, because you can see this is the phase, right? When you are also to introduce your Mahalwari and Rayatwari as well. India absorbed 10 to 12% of the British exports and nearly 20% of the British textile exports. Then after 1950, engine coaches, rail line and other railway stores were also imported to India, finished goods. Indian army was used for the British expansion in the colonialism in Asia and Africa. So Indian soldiers became a very important part of the colonialism in the other places. Then comes the third phase, that is the financial phase. The financial phase is also known as the era of the foreign investments and international competition for the colonies. Now, for example, 1860s to 1947, and that is also setting up the context of World War I, because one of the major contexts of the World War I was nothing but the search for the colonies, the quest or the greed for the colonies. So Indian industrial supremacy was challenged by several countries of Europe, US and Japan. As a result, application of the scientific knowledge to industry, pace of industrialization, increased supply. Okay? The world market became more unified due to revolution in the means of the international transport. So these things happened. It was the background of your third phase. That is, now so many countries are there. Not only the Britain is industrialized, but the other countries have also become industrialized. Japan, Europe, United States. They are also looking for the raw material, and they are looking also for the market. So they need to strengthen their hold on to the Indian society. Now also they have witnessed the 1857 revolt. So they need to bring some changes into the India. Okay? Now, during this stage, Britain made some strenuous effort to consolidate its control over India. Liberal policies got replaced with the reactionary policies. That we will see later on. For example, liberal policy means such as policies of the William Bentinck. Okay, we will do this child infanticide and we will not tolerate sati and all. Later on, it will be reflected in the reactionary policies of Lytton, Dufferin, Curzon. We will see that. We will see how these people have put the reactionary side of the Britishers or exposed the true side of the Britishers. So strengthening of the colonial rule over India was meant to keep out of the rivals as well as to attract the British capital into India and provide it security. As a result, a lot of British capital got invested in the railways, trade, to lesser extent in the plantation, coal mining, jute mills, shaping and banking in India. So this much arena of investment, foreign companies, foreign banks came into India. So post 1860, promoting foreign capital investment increase. We have discussed railways, loan debt to government, these things, shipping and all this. Need to protect the foreign capital, and we need to strengthen the British rule. Okay? We don't have to expand the British territory, but we need to strengthen the British rule. So money was more spent into the strong administration and the expansion of the rule. And also we need to now curb this process of modernization, because the modernization that we have started has also led to the idea of nationalism. ठीक है, whether it be the free press, whether it be the education, which has also led to this. For example, you can see the critique which is now coming of the Britishers because of these educated Indians only, because you have provided them the space, you have provided them the free press, and now these people are coming up and they are putting the critique of the Britishers. So issue hai, it's a lot of issues that are there. So that's the end of the session. Now we have discussed the two parts today. First, the deindustrialization, and secondly, the economic analysis or the economic analysis of the or the analysis of the economic impact of the British rule in India. A relatively longer session, but important, very, very important session. The importance you can realize, I have put 5 mains question, at least 5 mains question. 2 questions have been asked in the UPSC. Let us see. Examine critically the various facets of the economic policy of the British from the mid 18th century till independence. So you need to write this question. Okay, 2014 this question was asked. Critically examine the various facets of the economic policies. Then examine how the decline of the traditional artisan industry in colonial India crippled the rural economy. Very specific question they have asked, so you have to do a bit of brainstorming yourself. How this traditional artisan industry decline has crippled the rural economy. The points will be same, remember that. It's a good question to practice actually. It requires a bit of analytical skills, you know. थोड़े analytical skills को use करना है. So points the same, but they have to be rewritten in the different format. This is again a UPSC previous year question. Next question is, explain how the nature of the Indian economy was shaped by the colonial interest of the Britishers. ये overall, it's an overall question, that how the nature of the Indian economy was shaped by the British colonial interest. Then you have one more question. Though the means of the land revenue collection by the Britishers were different in the different parts of the country, they all had the similar fate for the Indians. Okay? So the means were different, but the fate is same. Okay? So you can write this question. The solution of this question is also there, because this is the question from our mains master program. This question I have framed. Next question is, what is meant by the un-British rule? Discuss the role of the Dadabhai Naoroji in exposing the evil of the British rule in India. Now you are more or less 70% prepared to write this question. But in my opinion, don't write this question, rather see the analysis of the question. Okay? So what is the un-British rule? Discuss the role of the Dadabhai Naoroji in exposing the evils of the British rule in India. Now this is the again a question from the mains master program. Mains master program, go to the question 1, question 1. This is the video, so you can watch this particular session. They have explained in detail this particular question solution. So discuss, read about it. Okay, we'll discuss in detail about Dadabhai Naoroji later on also. Very important personality. Question specific to Dadabhai Naoroji can be asked. Overall contribution of the Dadabhai Naoroji. Chalo, link I have also provided. Let us do some more questions. In 2018, the question was asked, economically, one of the results of the British rule in India in the 19th century was, 19th century means 1800 to 1899. First, increase exports of the Indian handicraft, growth in the number of Indian-owned factories, commercialization of Indian agriculture, and rapid increase in the urban population. Pause the video and try the answer. Very easy question. These questions in the UPSC, if we talk in the terms of the UPSC, these are must questions. You cannot afford to go get these questions wrong. You know? If you get these questions wrong, then journey becomes very tough. So very easy. Obviously, the increase in the exports of Indian handicraft, obviously, no growth in the number of Indian-owned factory. Yes, they have increased, but not to this much extent. Commercialization of Indian agriculture. Yes, that is a very true thing. Increase in the number of population. No. So obviously, the best answer is the third one. Chalo. Next question is, which of the following leaders did not believe in the drain theory of the Dadabhai Naoroji? Drain theory of the Dadabhai Naoroji. We have not discussed a lot of Indian leaders till now. No Indian leader, so as to say. Freedom fighter. But we need to solve this question with common sense. It's a 1996 question. Who among the following did not believe in the drain theory of Dadabhai Naoroji? Now, we have discussed that Dadabhai Naoroji was a moderate, right? And obviously moderates like the economic critique, that they will support this economic critique. They are moderates, but they are against the Britishers, right? Britishers means they are against the idea that we need to be treated fairly. That's the idea. And with the economic drain, they can see that this is not a fair thing. This is a very unfair injustice being done. So for example, now these are the moderates. So imagine what will be the view of the extremist. We will discuss these terms, don't worry. I put prematurely this question. So extremists will more be saying that yes, this is the wrong thing that they have done. So Bal Gangadhar Tilak, he will believe in drain theory? Obviously he will, because he's an extremist. RC Dutt, we have discussed RC Dutt. We have discussed MG Ranade. Yes. So these are the people we know that they must have supported the drain theory. What about Sir Syed Ahmad Khan? No, he did not support. One of the argument behind it, we also read about Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was basically a loyalist to the Britishers, because he believed that if he became loyal to the Britishers, that is the only hope for the Muslims or the Mohammedans to become educated and to become modernized. Hence, he cannot support a theory which basically, being a loyalist, you cannot support this particular theory. And that is why this is the answer. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. So even if you don't know a lot about it, but from these perspectives, you need to answer. And slowly you have to develop these perspectives, because modern history there is a whole lot of syllabus. So many books are written, so many different perspectives, so many different facts. Obviously, we cannot cover all the facts here. We will cover just the basic minimum things and some questions, obviously. But you need to develop these perspectives, which perspectives will help you to solve these questions. This will help you to eliminate a lot of choices and to increase the probabilities of getting your questions right. And that is the whole idea about clearing the prelims exam. Next question is, which among the following use the phrase un-British to criticize the English colonial rule? 2008. Very easy question. Un-British rule, book from the name itself, Dadabhai Naoroji. Next is tough question. The per capita income in India is 20 in 1867-68. Was ascertained for the first time by. Now, first of all, this fact itself is not important, but important here is this term, the first time, right? So you may not remember this fact. Okay, yaar, ye kisko yaad hoga? Who can remember such facts? No. You can remember, okay, the name in the economic theory, M.G. Ranade, R.C. Dutt, Dadabhai Naoroji, these things are given. But remember, there is a one word that is the first time. And the first time, when you see the first time, this must be your Dadabhai Naoroji. So these are the areas with which you can say the UPSC plays, right? You are not supposed to get inflicted or get rattled by these figures, but rather think about this first time. Next question is, which of the following were the economic critics of the colonialism in India? Dadabhai Naoroji, R.C. Dutt, G. Subramanyam Iyer. We have discussed that. 2015 question. So Dadabhai Naoroji, yes. Subramanyam Iyer, yes. And R.C. Dutt, yes. So all the three options are correct. Even if you know 1 and 3, even if you don't know about 2, then also 1 and 3, there is no option such as 1 and 3. So 1, 2 and 3 will be correct. Next question is, which of the following statement correctly explained? It's a 2020 question, this year's prelims. Which of the following statement correctly explains the impact of the Industrial Revolution on India during the first half of the 19th century? During the first half of the 19th century. Means, first, just keep the timeline. First half of the 19th century means this is the time. Okay. This is the time, what was the time? You can imagine that was the time land revenue systems were being done. Indian handicrafts were ruined. Machines were introduced in the Indian textile. Large number railway lines were laid in the many parts of India. Heavy duties were imposed on the imports of the British manufacturer. Easy answer hai na? So easy. First, you get the time, you realize that what is happening, and then you realize that obviously second statement is wrong. Railways are not being laid till now. Heavy duties imposed on the imports of the British manufacturer, obviously no. So answer is very easy. That is the Indian handicraft were ruined. Very easy question. And these questions are must question. Very easy question, must question. You cannot afford to get these questions right. And in fact, a lot of questions in the modern history, if they are slightly difficult, slightly I'm saying, that also form in the must category, because modern history is such a subject that almost every aspirant is very comfortable with. If you ask any aspirant, सबसे favorite subject or सबसे easy subject क्या है, what is the easiest subject, everyone will say modern history is the one subject. Chalo. So with this, we finish our session for 16 session. In the next session, that is the 17th session, we'll finish our theme 2. Hamara theme 2 will finish in the next session. Very small session will be there. We'll solve a few questions as well in the theme 2. Then we'll start with the theme 3, that is the Indian reaction. Okay? So till then, bye-bye. Thank you.